Level 1, the invitation. You don't apply for this job. You get chosen. That's the first thing that separates a family office from everything else you've ever heard of. Hedge funds have websites. Private equity firms do campus recruiting. Investment banks run internship programs with matching polos and orientation week. A family office sends someone to find you. Maybe it's a professor who mentions your name at a dinner you weren't invited to. Maybe it's a quiet email from an address you don't recognize, written in 3 sentences, offering a conversation. Maybe a man in a gray suit sits next to you at a conference and asks better questions than anyone in the room. And then the conversation happens. You walk into a building that has no logo outside. The lobby is understated in the way that only extremely expensive things can afford to be understated. The art on the walls costs more than your parents' house. Nobody mentions it. You sit across from someone who manages more capital than the GDP of a small country. They speak slowly. They ask you about your values before they ask about your credentials. You think this is unusual. It isn't. This is the filter. Family offices exist to manage, protect, and grow the wealth of a single ultra-high net worth family. We're not talking millionaires. We're talking generational dynasties. Families where the patriarch built something, a company, an empire, a financial position, that now requires a private institution just to maintain it. The numbers start at $100 million under management. The serious ones hold billions. The legendary ones hold tens of billions across real estate, private equity, public markets, art collections, philanthropic foundations, operating companies, and assets in jurisdictions you've never heard of. And someone has to run all of it. That someone could be you. Level 1 feels like an invitation to something exclusive. That's true. What they don't tell you yet is that exclusive cuts in every direction. You're in the room. The machine is watching. Level 2, the structure nobody explains. You think you understand wealth. You don't. Most people who work in finance understand pieces. A portfolio manager understands equities. A real estate analyst understands cap rates. A tax attorney understands structures. A private banker understands relationships. In a family office, you need to understand all of it. Simultaneously. With the awareness that every decision touches every other decision. That a tax move affects the estate plan. That the estate plan affects the operating company governance. That the operating company governance affects the family dynamic. That the family dynamic affects everything. This is the architecture of real wealth at scale. The family office is typically organized around a chief investment officer, a chief operating officer, and a small team of specialists. Small is relative. The largest single-family offices in the world employ dozens of people. Some employ hundreds. But compared to the capital they manage, the headcount is almost insultingly lean. Your first weeks are spent learning the map. There's the investment side. Liquid assets, public equities, bonds, hedge fund allocations, currency positions. Illiquid assets, private equity stakes, direct deals, real estate portfolios spanning multiple continents. Alternatives, art, wine, collectibles managed not as hobbies but as appreciating stores of value. Then there's the operating side. Legal entities. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of holding companies, trusts, foundations, partnerships, each created for a specific purpose. Offshore structures in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Singapore. Domestic foundations with their own boards and grant-making mandates. Then there's the family side. The principal. Their spouse. The children. The siblings. The next generation already being prepared for inheritance. Everyone has different risk tolerances, different goals, different levels of interest, different levels of competence with money. Your job is to serve all of them without letting any of them destroy the whole. And then there's the administrative infrastructure. The private aviation coordination. The property management. The household staffing. The personal security arrangements. The event logistics. The medical concierge relationships. You realize this isn't a job. It's a sovereign function. Nobody tells you this in the interview. They let you discover it, because the way you respond to discovering it tells them whether you can actually do this. If you're overwhelmed, you're finished before you start. If you're energized, you might survive. Most people stand at the edge of this complexity and feel two things at once, power and vertigo. That's exactly where the family office wants you. Level 3, proximity to power. There is something that changes inside you when you start operating at this level. It's quiet at first. Subtle. You attend your first meeting and realize the person across the table controls an asset base larger than the entire venture capital industry deployed last quarter. You sit in on a call where 3 people calmly discuss acquiring a minority stake in a company that employs 40,000 people. You review a document and notice a line item, almost casual in its placement, for a donation to a political foundation that influences policy in 3 countries. This is not theoretical. This is Tuesday afternoon. And you're in the room. The proximity to this kind of capital and decision-making does something to your psychology that no MBA program, no trading floor, no consulting firm can replicate. You start seeing the world at a different resolution. You understand that the public version of events is almost always a simplified version. The real conversations happen in rooms like the ones you're now entering. You begin to understand why certain regulations exist, and who shaped them. You begin to understand why certain markets move, and who was positioned before the movement. You begin to understand that the financial media is a delayed, filtered, and often incomplete reflection of decisions that were made months or years earlier in exactly these settings. This knowledge is an edge. It's also a weight. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The simplified version of the world that most people operate inside becomes impossible to return to. You have been changed by the exposure. If you've followed this far, comment what level you're at right now. Because level 4 is where the real cost begins. Level 4, the principal relationship. Everything in a family office flows from one relationship. Your relationship with the principal. Not the chief investment officer. Not the board of trustees. The principal. The patriarch or matriarch whose name is on the wealth. Whose decisions created the foundation. Whose trust, once earned, unlocks everything. Whose displeasure, once triggered, ends everything. This person is unlike anyone you have worked for before. They are used to deference. They have been surrounded by people who agree with them for long enough that disagreement feels personal even when it isn't. They have enough money that consequences, for them, have a different weight than they have for anyone around them. They can afford to be wrong in ways that you cannot. And yet, the best principals, the ones who have sustained generational wealth, know this about themselves. They want people around them who will tell them the truth. They want advisors who will push back. They will test you early to see if you have the spine to disagree with them respectfully and clearly. Fail the test by agreeing when you should push back. You become furniture. Pleasant, useful in a limited way, but ultimately replaceable and irrelevant to the real decisions. Pass the test by saying the thing everyone else is afraid to say, with the evidence to support it and the composure to hold your position when challenged. You become irreplaceable. The principal relationship is the most important skill in a family office, and it cannot be taught in any classroom. It is learned in real time, under real pressure, in moments where the stakes are real and the consequences are immediate. You will make a mistake in this relationship. Almost certainly in your first year. What the principal watches is not whether you make the mistake. It's how you handle it. Do you own it immediately, explain what happened, present what you've done to correct it, and move forward? Or do you deflect, minimize, blame the system, and hope they don't notice? The second path ends careers in this world. The first path, done correctly, often deepens trust more than if the mistake had never happened. That is the psychology of the principal relationship. It is intimate in ways that corporate hierarchies never are. Your professional fate and their family's financial fate are genuinely connected. That kind of connection changes how you show up every single day. Level 5, the money no one talks about. Let's be direct about compensation. Because this is what most people want to know and what nobody in this world discusses publicly. The base salaries at established family offices start where most people's ceilings are. Entry-level analysts fresh from top universities or 2 years at a bulge bracket investment bank can expect $100,000 to $150,000 in base salary, sometimes more. Mid-level professionals, a real estate specialist, an investment associate, a financial controller, sit between $200,000 and $400,000. Senior roles, the ones reporting directly to the CIO or to the principal, can range from $500,000 to well above $1 million in base alone. And then there's carry. And co-investment rights. And discretionary bonuses that are entirely at the principal's will, which can be transformative or non-existent depending on the year, the returns, and how you've been positioned in the family's mind. The ceiling is genuinely uncapped. But here's what that money costs you. And this is what nobody tells you before you're inside. It costs you your context. When you earn at this level, surrounded by this level of wealth, you develop a warped reference frame for what is normal. You attend dinners where the wine selected casually costs more than your first car. You coordinate travel on private aircraft and then feel a strange friction returning to commercial flights during personal vacations. The private aircraft isn't even yours, it belongs to the family, but proximity to it still recalibrates your sense of what basic travel means. You stop talking about salary with former colleagues. The numbers have diverged too much in too short a time. Your friendships from before feel like they exist in a different world. Because they do. This is not arrogance. It's dislocation. The money hasn't made you better. It's made you different. And different, over time, becomes lonely in ways that no amount of compensation resolves. The title improved. The account balance improved. Something quieter started disappearing. Level 6, discretion as a lifestyle. You will sign more NDAs in your first month than most professionals sign in a career. This is not unusual. This is the entry fee. A family office operates on total informational control. Everything you learn about the family's financial position, their legal structures, their personal relationships, their health, their fears, their plans for the next generation, all of it is confidential. Permanently. Not just while you're employed. After you leave. Potentially for the rest of your life. This creates a particular kind of professional solitude. You cannot discuss your most interesting work with anyone outside the office. You cannot post about it. You cannot write about it. You cannot use it in interviews except in the vaguest possible terms. You cannot process it with friends or a therapist who hasn't been cleared. The most extraordinary things you will witness professionally, deals that change industries, decisions that shift markets, dynamics inside one of the world's wealthiest families, live only inside you. Some people find this suffocating. Some people find it powerful. Most people find it both. There is a particular competence that comes from carrying information without releasing it. You become very good at listening. You become very good at knowing what not to say and when not to say it. You develop a kind of professional composure that people outside the family office world notice but can't quite name. You know things. You don't tell anyone. The weight of that knowing reshapes how you carry yourself. Discretion becomes not a rule you follow but a reflex you develop. After enough time, you don't even notice yourself doing it. The filter is always on. What this costs you is spontaneity. The part of human connection that comes from sharing your world with others. The relief of saying out loud what you witnessed and what it meant. You win professionally and contain privately. For some people, this is unbearable. They leave within 2 years. For others, it becomes identity. They are shaped by the silence into something unusual. The machine has started to own you. The question is whether you notice before it's complete. Level 7, the next generation problem. This is where family offices become genuinely complex. The wealth was created by one person. Or one generation. But wealth, by design, must survive multiple generations to justify the infrastructure built around it. The entire apparatus, the trusts, the entities, the investment committees. The family governance documents, exists to answer one fundamental question. What happens to all of this when the person who built it is gone? And the answer is almost never simple. Because the next generation is real. They are actual human beings with their own personalities, their own ambitions, their own weaknesses, their own relationships. They are not abstractions in a succession plan. They are people who grew up in extraordinary privilege and are now expected to either steward that privilege responsibly or at least avoid destroying it catastrophically. Some of them are exceptional. Genuinely capable people who could have created wealth entirely independently but who instead choose to learn the family enterprise and bring something real to it. Some of them are incapable and know it, which is honest and workable. Some of them are incapable and don't know it. That is the dangerous configuration. Your job as a family office professional, at senior levels especially, involves navigating these family dynamics with a precision that has nothing to do with finance. It requires emotional intelligence. Political intelligence. The ability to give honest assessments to a patriarch who loves their child in a way that clouds judgment. The ability to structure governance that protects the institution even when individual family members behave in ways that threaten it. You are simultaneously an investment professional, an organizational designer, a family mediator, and a guardian of a continuity plan that spans decades. This level of responsibility is extraordinary. It's also deeply human. You watch families succeed at this transfer. You watch families fracture at it. You watch siblings who were raised in the same house, with every advantage, become adversaries over governance rights and carried interest allocations. This is where success stops feeling like success. This is where you realize you're managing something more fragile than any asset class. You're managing legacy. And legacy, unlike an equity portfolio, cannot be rebalanced with a few trades. Level 8, the cost of being trusted. Somewhere between year 3 and year 5, something shifts. You become trusted. Not professionally trusted in the way that all competent employees eventually become trusted. Genuinely trusted. The principal calls you directly, not through an intermediary. You're included in conversations that aren't technically your area but that require someone the family believes in completely. You're sent to represent the family's interests in rooms where the family itself cannot or chooses not to appear. This is the highest form of professional recognition in this world. There is no public award for it. There is no LinkedIn post. The trust itself is private, because the relationship that produced it is private. And it is an extraordinary thing to hold. But what you hold alongside the trust is their reality. You know the patriarch has a health condition that affects the succession timeline. You know the marriage is strained in ways that could affect governance. You know one child is struggling privately in ways that complicate their role in the institution. You know there are relationships with external partners that carry reputational risk. You know the parts of the empire that are performing beautifully and the parts that are quietly underperforming and why. You carry all of it. Because you've been trusted with all of it. And when you go home, if going home still feels like a complete transition, which it may not, all of it comes with you. The most trusted people in family offices often describe a particular feeling. Not unhappiness. Not dissatisfaction. Something more precise. A sense of being enormously competent inside an enormously complex system and yet having nobody outside that system who can fully understand what that experience is actually like. Success without a shared witness. Achievement without a peer. You've arrived somewhere real. But the arrival is solitary. That's the cost of being the person the family trusts most. Level 9, what generational wealth actually protects. Here is what they don't teach in economics courses. Money, at the family office scale, is not primarily about consumption. The principle is not building this infrastructure because they need more things. The yacht has already been purchased. The properties have already been acquired. The luxury dimension of the wealth has already been expressed. What the family office protects is freedom. Specifically, the freedom to make decisions based entirely on values, timelines, and vision, without external pressure from shareholders, boards, creditors, or quarterly reporting cycles. When a family controls their capital privately and completely, they can hold a position for 30 years if they believe in it. They can exit a market the moment their conviction changes. They can back a technology that will take 15 years to become commercially relevant. They can decline a profitable opportunity because it conflicts with their values or their legacy plan. This is a form of power that institutional investors, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, endowments, admire deeply and can rarely replicate. Because the institutions all have stakeholders. The family office has one stakeholder. The family. What you begin to understand at this level is that wealth, at scale, is not a number. It's a time horizon. The family with a 100-year plan operates in a fundamentally different reality than the hedge fund chasing quarterly returns. And you, now deep inside this institution, begin to think differently about time. About patience. About the difference between value and price. About the gap between what the market thinks today and what the underlying reality will look like in a decade. This is the cognitive gift of working inside generational wealth. It rewires how you see the world. Not just financially. Temporally. You start measuring things in generations rather than quarters. It is one of the most profound shifts a professional mind can undergo. And it is invisible from the outside. Level 10, the final truth of the machine. You've been here long enough now to see the full picture. You've watched principles age. You've watched succession plans execute cleanly and others unravel. You've watched families that were unified by the builder fracture gently under the weight of inheritance. You've watched fortunes that seemed permanent shift, shrink, grow, and transform. You've watched yourself change. The person who walked into that understated lobby years ago, nervous and impressed by the art on the walls, that person has been replaced by someone quieter, more precise, more capable, and more alone in the specific way that expertise creates distance. You know things most people will never know. You've operated at a level most people will never access. You've shaped decisions that ripple through institutions and markets and families in ways that are never credited to you and never could be. And you've learned the final truth. Wealth at this scale is not the destination. It is the institution that protects a family's ability to keep making choices. But the family still has to make good choices. Still has to stay unified. Still has to produce people in the next generation who are capable and worthy of the stewardship. Still has to find meaning inside the privilege that doesn't dissolve into entitlement or emptiness. The money doesn't solve the human problem. It just changes which version of the human problem you're facing. You've spent years as the professional closest to this truth. You've watched the wealthiest families on earth grapple with it. Some do it beautifully. Some fail quietly. Most are somewhere in between, doing their honest best with the particular challenges that come with holding more than most people will ever comprehend. And you? You go home. You look at your own life. The compensation has been transformative. The access has been extraordinary. The knowledge has been real. But at some point, often in a quiet moment that surprises you with its honesty, you ask a question that no asset allocation model can answer. What am I building? Not for them. For yourself. The machine gave you proximity to legacy. What you do with that proximity, whether you build something of your own, whether you find meaning beyond the institution, whether the skills and perspective you've accumulated become the foundation of something that is actually yours, that is the final question. The one the family office never addresses. Because it's not their job to ask it for you. Subscribe now. Because the next ladder we're climbing goes somewhere most people never even think to look. Somewhere right now, someone younger is sitting across from a man in a gray suit in a building with no logo outside. They think the invitation is the achievement. They think proximity to this world is the destination. They don't know yet what the machine costs. They don't know what they'll carry. What they'll know. What they'll lose. What they'll become. The machine is waiting. And it is very, very patient.